situation even worse.
According to the RAC, the surge in demand has led to the price of a litre of unleaded petrol going up by a penny since last Friday. Meanwhile, UK retailer Halfords, and this blows my mind, has said that the sale of jerry cans, which many motorists use to store petrol, increased last week by 1,656%. So that is ridiculous. It's just sent people out to buy who wouldn't normally do it. They've gone and got jerry cans on top. It's completely insane.
But it is that panic. You know, why do people panic? What is it? Now, panic invariably comes from, you know, anxiety. Is it irrational behaviour? People say no. It is based on a rational belief that you think that something is going to get missing. So, with the toilet rolls or with the petrol, what you saw is you saw an image on TV. Seeing is believing. So you had this anxiety, you saw there was a problem, and then all of a sudden you start competing with everybody else. I must get there first. Yeah. I must join a queue. So it isn't irrational behaviour, but we can push it right up there, but how do we de-escalate it? So what makes us scramble to the shops to stockpile? Well, to help us answer this, we are joined by Zoe Clews, who is an anxiety and trauma therapist. Morning, Zoe.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
So we're good. We are good. So what is it? I mean, where people are being called stupid, idiots, going and, you know, getting their petrol, causing these queues. Are people stupid? Are they to blame?
Well, look, you know, panic buying never brings out the best qualities in the human spirit, does it? Panic buying's been around, you know, since ancient time. It's nothing new. It's been observed during public health emergencies since the ancient period. And in many ways, the behaviour that we're seeing over the last few weeks is no different to, for example, the Boxing Day sales, when people are camping on the pavement and knocking down staff as the store doors are open. But of course, it's been exacerbated, hasn't it, by everything we've gone through over the last 19 months. And there's people have been under chronic stress, their nervous systems are fried, and of course, there's going to be higher levels of concern about everything. So, you know, it's important that we take into consideration that people are anxious about it, but it's also important that we try and get some perspective on this as well. And, you know, people don't want to become part of the problem. There's lots of reasons psychologically why we panic buy. If we go and buy something when there's a feeling of scarcity, neurochemically it gives us a hit of dopamine, which is the reward chemical, which makes us instantly feel safer. There's also herd mentality, of course. So we look around at our fellow humans to see what they're doing as to clues as to what we should be doing as well. So I don't think calling people stupid is helpful. I think trying to understand why people are doing this and giving them better ways to perhaps cope with their levels of anxiety, and perhaps also looking at, you know, what happened last time you panic bought? Did you really need to panic buy to that level that you did? And was it due to an actual shortage, or was it due to mass panic buying? What we don't want to do is become part of the problem.
Are there certain people who are more susceptible to being panicked and panic buying?
Of course, anyone with high levels of anxiety, you know, we have these 4 physiological defences. We all have them, they're inbuilt. They're called fight, flight, freeze and fawn. So flight is when we get anxious, we catastrophise, that's when we do panic buy. We have fights, which is when we get angry, we defend our territory. And that's when we see an example of, you know, punch-ups at petrol stations, for example, that we've seen. Freeze is when we go into shock. Fawn is when we tend to feel really powerless. So all of us over the last 19 months have been shunted into these physiological states, in and out of them, because there's been a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, and people have been under enormous pressure. Anyone with high anxiety, anyone who is more likely to catastrophize, is more likely to be susceptible to panic buying. And of course, the influence of media headlines. They're going to be absorbing them more readily and, you know, thinking I need to do something immediately.
So what can we do to help someone who we see is suffering from anxiety and is more likely to be the person that goes and panic buys? You can see that it's affected them psychologically. What advice can we give them to help calm them down?
Well, one of the first things I would say is that, you have to look at reducing your levels of anxiety in whatever ways you can. Of course, you need to look after yourself and make sure that you're taking care of business, if you like. But you need to do whatever you can to bring your anxiety levels down. So you need to make sure that you're getting adequate rest, sleep, step away from whatever's triggering you. Reading, a constant daily drip feed of doom about how everything is, going to hell is really not going to help your nervous system. And again, you've got to bring some rationale to the situation. Look at the last time you panic bought. Did you need those things? Did we really need to buy all those loo rolls last time? Again, we don't want to be part of the problem. So it's about taking yourself out of that fight or flight situation. When you're working with someone you're talking to somebody who's in that very anxious state, what you want to be doing is talking them down and, letting them know that it's really important not to catastrophize and getting into that place, which we call psychologically the window of tolerance, which is where we feel a bit more reasonable. We don't make good decisions when we're in a panicked place. Of course, sometimes we need to, because there are genuine emergency situations. So asking yourself a series of questions or asking the person that is in a very anxious state about panic buying can be really helpful. Did you need to do this so much last time? Let's get really rational about it. Let's actually look at what's going on here rather than just being impacted deeply by a lot of the media and social media headlines that are being bandied around.
Well, you hit upon it there, Zoe, the media, and how that can magnify what people are feeling because they're seeing it. They're seeing people doing, as you say, rushing to the petrol stations. And there was a survey last week, and it said, who do we blame for this panic buying? And the media came out top. The public came second. Shouldn't they have known better? Couldn't they have controlled themselves a little bit more, doing some of those things you say to get rid of some of your anxiety? And finally, government actually came out best in that survey. They didn't think it was government so much as I said, magnifying the impact through the media. So what should the media be looking to do? How could they have de-escalated the situation?
Well, you could also call panic buying provoked buying as well. Psychologically, it can be called that. And the simple fact is that, for example, BP were experiencing fuel exhaustion at many of its forecourts for a week before the headlines, yet everybody still got the fuel they needed. Now, had the media not stirred up the fires and everyone had continued to buy fuel as they would have done normally, then there wouldn't have been the queues at petrol pumps. Arriving at a filling station and finding out it's out of unleaded or diesel is hardly rare, is it? And we'd all have done what we usually do when that happens and driven to the next gas station where there would have, probably been fuel. So I think, when the media starts screaming headlines of fuel shortage, of course, that's going to send everybody, into a sort of a crazed place. And actually, it can be quite a rational response that if you think that something's running out, that you go and stock up. It's just that human behaviour people get anxious, they get really angry with each other. And, there's also something that isn't always highlighted around media, which I would call it's called ironic process. So I think I saw a headline the other day and it said, "Don't panic, urges number 10 after BP cuts fuel delivery." Now, that's a bit like saying, "Don't think of the white bear." I mean, what do you immediately do? The word panic causes people to panic. There's a reason they don't say it on aeroplanes anymore. So, I think there is a responsibility. There's a lot of sensationalism. And of course, we need to be aware of things. But the media do need to be responsible for what they are, igniting in people.
Can I ask you this? I'd read it somewhere. They said a way maybe to de-escalate it was to make people think about people who could be worse off than them. So all of a sudden then I saw in the newspapers, think about those people who have to go to work, nurses, care workers, people who are working in shops, people who are, having to drive about from job to job. And then if you think that they need it more than you and their life is going to be made worse, that can stop you panic buying. Is that right?
But is that easy to do when you're already in an anxious state, Zoe?
Well, yeah, I mean, all of these things are useful processes to bring you back to feeling more grounded, and because what we don't want to do, you need to look after yourself, but you also want to be able to, we need to work together on these things. We want to look after each other, and there's a really important point actually here. So there's a professor of social psychology at the University of St Andrews, Stephen Riker, and he argues that when it comes to, with human behaviour, generally we're supportive of one another and we generally thrive and survive in a spirit of unity and collaboration in every area of life except for one, and that's consumerism. So he argues that this is the only area of our lives in which we're placed in direct social competition and conflict. So, this is a really important point, and I think it is actually a really good technique, because there might be somebody that needs to get to work at a care home to look after people, and that can be a good sort of that can right size it for you. Right sizing things is really important. Do I really need to buy all this petrol? Is there somebody else going to need this for something that's much more important? So it's a way of right sizing and rationalising for yourself. So actually, I think it's a really good technique. Yeah.
Zoe Clews, it's been fantastic to have you on this morning to talk us through panic and how to reduce our anxiety levels. Thank you very much indeed. And